I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my feature author of the month of October. She is award-winning author, no other than Miss Jennifer Brozek.
Hello.
Welcome back, Miss Jennifer. As usual, can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Jennifer Brozek. I'm a full-time author, editor, and media tie-in writer. I've been doing this full-time for over 17 years. I have my 24th anthology out last month and my 16th novel out in... What month are we? We're not... Must be
October.
August. Sorry.
Yes, and congratulations for your talent. Thank you for sharing to the world. And today, which one of your books we gonna talk about?
We're going to talk about the Melissa Allen trilogy, and it's the Never Let Me omnibus. And when it came out in three novels: Never Let Me Sleep, Never Let Me Leave, and Never Let Me Die, which I actually have the audiobooks for.
Wow.
But then the company sold the print rights to Simon and Schuster, and so Simon and Schuster put together the physical rights.
Okay.
One, and now I have the rights back, and this is the version that is out through Speaking Volumes. And it's one of my favorite series I think I've ever written.
Yes. So what's your primary motivation in writing Never Let Me?
The primary motivation for Melissa Allen is she just wants to get through the day. She is a troubled teenager who is on psychotropic meds because she has hallucinations and depression and schizophrenia. So she's under house arrest when the story starts. But she wakes up and everything is normal to her, and then she discovers everyone in her house, on her street, and in her town is dead. And then she discovers she's not alone. And she has to figure out what happened, keep it from happening, and do it before the monsters get her. And the whole time she's wondering, did I have a psychotic break? So Melissa Allen would just like to survive.
So how do you develop the compelling and relatable characters of Never Let Me?
This particular character, I had a friend's daughter who was going through a lot of the same things as this character. And I know she never had any heroes in books that were like her. I'm on the autistic spectrum. I never saw any heroes that were like me. My mom was born with a congenital defect. She didn't have the top part of her hand. And she never saw heroes like her in the books. So really, I wrote the Melissa Allen series to give my friend's daughter a hero. And then as the series went on, more and more characters came into it. I wrote this series to give me and my family and my loved ones a hero that they'd never seen growing up. It took a lot of research. I spent a lot of time on the phone talking with people. I wanted to get the characters right. And the main motivation for this series was give myself and those I love the hero they never had in a book.
So when you took the right back again, did you add something to Never Let Me to make it better?
I missed the first part of the question.
Because you took back the rights for this book, right? So did you add more
Uh,
to
the
make the
omnibus
story?
comes with an extra story called "Never Let Me Feel." It comes after the "Never Let Me Sleep, Never Let Me Leave, Never Let Me Die," and then there's a short story that actually circles back to the beginning called "Never Let Me Feel," and I think it's a short story that this particular character needed.
How do you structure the plot to keep the readers engaged? Never Let Me.
So the first thing is, I'm very excited about this book. The first thing I did was I gave you a tiny peek before the book, and it's called The Day Before. It's 4 short little vignettes where someone is doing something normal, and then they got tired, and then they went to sleep, and then they died. And I did this 4 times with 4 different groups of people. And then I started this book with, I live by the clock, I survive by the pills. So I'm right at the beginning, I'm telling you, the structure of this book is, the first novel is your narrator is an untrustworthy narrator. So it basically is in 3 parts. What's happened? She's discovering literally everybody is dead, and she's wondering if she did it. Then she discovering that it's not just her, it's the entire state of South Dakota. And I raised the stakes by getting her in touch with someone from the Department of Homeland Security. Now, I had to do a little bit of research to figure out how we were going to get to this point, because it's like, well, what would happen if everybody in a single state stopped responding after a certain time period? How long would it take for the world to notice? We determined it was about 2 hours, because in North Dakota, in this particular place, only because they have an international airport on one corner, and they have a military-based nuclear power plant on the other corner. So people would notice. So first, what happened? Her discovering things are happening. There are strangers in the town. Then her discovering it's actually the entire state of North Dakota, and there's a number to call. And then I raised the stakes even more with the third. You have to solve this problem, or we're basically going to destroy the things that are the invasion or whatever is happening, using very devastating armament, because there's something happening in the town that she lives in that is manifesting a field outward. So she's at point 0, and she is not allowed to leave until she solves this problem.
Interesting, Miss Jennifer. So, what strategies do you use to overcome writer's block when you writing Never Let Me?
Right. I didn't have writer's block with this particular series. It came very fast. I actually wrote the first book in 13 days.
Wow.
It was a book I wanted to. I thought, what if Stephen King had written 4 teenagers back in the day,
Yes.
like in his Tommyknocker era? And I was like, I want to read that, so I'm going to write that. And I wrote it very, very fast. I wrote it, the first book, to actually be a one-off. I wanted to leave the ending of the book nebulous. Did she have a psychotic break, or was there actually? It was, it's a psychological thriller, science fiction thriller, or was there the beginning part of an invasion? And I finished the book, and then for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, I actually had dreams about this character, and she was so mad at me. She's like, my story is not done. You can't do this. You have to keep going. So I actually had to rewrite the ending and make it clear that it wasn't a psychotic break. And so in the entire series, I wrote all 3 books in a total of 18 months. It was very cohesive, very tight. So there's no writer's block. But the only question I had was, okay, I put you in a situation of you can go anywhere. You have total freedom. She was under house arrest. Now there's no authorities. What can I do to make it scary for her again? Well, I drop her into an underground laboratory where she gets locked in. So I trap her in a very, very tiny confined space of like 5 levels of a building underground. So I was able to do the expand the world by contracting the world and bringing in more teenagers who had saved the world. The last one, I opened up the world again by giving her and some of her companions more freedom. But I did have the problem of I needed them to break into a hospital on a military base that actually exists in North Dakota. Not North Dakota. In Missouri. So I actually had someone I knew go drive, who had the permissions to be on base, go to the military base, drive to the hospital, and give me the description. So that actually was a sticking point. I couldn't just go using Google Maps, walk around towns. I did that for the first book. I actually went to, it was Oneida, North Dakota, and I literally physically, I used Google Maps and I literally walked around the town. It's about a mile square.
So, what techniques do you use to write effective dialogue in Never Let Me?
Well, one of my favorite techniques, and I teach this a lot, if you want to show where someone is by the language they use and the cadence of their words, to give someone a very good example of that, I suggest go to a coffee shop at noon. Pick a small independent coffee shop with a bookstore, maybe one that sells crystals, and just eavesdrop. Listen to the conversations around you of what they're talking about, how they're speaking. And then the next day, go to a business center, go to a Starbucks or something like that at noon and listen to those conversations. Based on how people speak, what they're doing, and the words that they use, you can tell context of where you are immediately. It's rather like I'm former military, so when I go into any military base, your posture gets better, your language changes. It's called code switching. So effective dialogue has to take into account where a person is and who they're speaking to. Are they just speaking to someone they respect? Are they speaking to someone who has power over them, whether they respect them or not? Do they like them? Are they intimidated? Are they in love with? Are they shy? All of that informs how a person speaks. Body language as well. If you don't like someone, a lot of times that the person will turn away. Often, if they're feeling very uncomfortable, they'll rub the back of their necks. And you bringing body language and shifting of the body to and fro into the forefront of your dialogue, because dialogue is not just words, it's body movement. It's how does someone enter a scene? Do they just sort of walk in and plop down into a chair, showing that they're comfortable or that they are confident or that they're being rude, interrupting everybody? Do they walk into and stand on the outside of a circle and just sort of wait? And then when they finally get a chance, they say something, but they say it in a way that's hesitant or ends with a question. Like they're offering something to the group and in a way of asking to be invited into the conversation. The other thing that I do, and I teach this to, is I will write 6 lines of dialogue. And the 6 lines of dialogue, I will teach people, say, you cannot change the lines of dialogue at all, but you're going to write 3 different stories. One is going to be a Western with between a husband and a wife. One is going to be urban fantasy between 2 teenagers. And one is going to be traditional fantasy between a lord and his vassal. And the only way, the words are not going to change. What's going to change is how you move the characters around the dialogue. And this will help you. In any short story or a novel, the words matter. So every word needs to inform the reader of something: location, age of the protagonists, what is their relationship to each other. You can have the same words, but be incredibly angry or incredibly sad or deeply in love with each other. It's rather like, have you ever had somebody fold dish towels angrily at you? Or your mother was very, very angry at you, but you knew she was angry, but she wasn't saying anything specific other than set the table. It would be a difference, folding and Daniel, set the table, versus handing you plates and saying, Daniel, set the table. You don't change the dialogue, but the way the character moves around the dialogue makes it that much more interesting to the reader and tells them intuitively more about what's going on between the 2 characters and the space that they're inhabiting.
Very well said. Miss Jennifer, very well said. So how do you balance showing versus telling in your writing Never Let Me?
There is a fine line. Sometimes you have to tell there has to be narration. Showing relationships between characters versus telling them. You can say something like, and I've just started a new novel called Emery Gray, and it's the 3rd in the series, but I have to remember, this could be the first book someone picks up of mine. They don't know these characters. They don't know anything about them. So you can have the characters interact, and then one character leaves the scene or does something, and the main point of view character can think or say, or there can be some sort of narration that says, of course, this person left the way they did. They've worked together for a long time. They've established their communication. Or telling the reader what someone looks like. When you get on a phone call with someone, a lot of times we look off into space and we're seeing the person in our mind's eye. One way to tell the reader what someone looks like, and it's telling rather than showing, is the main character can sit back and call someone, and you make the narration. You could see her in his mind's eye, fair skin, long brown hair, and hazel eyes, much like her husband, Ollie Tronick, which then tells you 2 characters. One is elf, one is human, but they both have similar characteristics. You have just told them that. Whereas another scene, you can have a man come in, sit down, and run a hand over his short cropped red hair, and then have a conversation, because you're saying he runs his hand through his hair in a gesture of irritation. So that is a showing versus the previous example of someone specifically thinking about what someone looks like. so they can tell the narrator can tell the reader what they look like.
Yes, for sure. So, how did you manage pacing in Never Let Me to maintain tension and interest?
Well, there is a writer trick, which is always end a chapter on a cliffhanger. Now, a small cliffhanger, but a cliffhanger. But you cannot use every moment where the character is running. You need to have moments of downtime. You need to have moments of introspection. In between the fights, you need to have a conversation. So what I do is, when I first write the book, I just write the story as I see it. When I come back to the book in the edits, I start thinking about, am I getting bored at all? Has anything happened? Is the character using their agency? Or are they just sort of being pulled along like a cork in a river? I also have this thing that says, this is a personal thing. If I ever think, oh God, wouldn't it be terrible if X happened right now? I have to stop and write that. One of the examples in Never Let Me Die, the third book in this trilogy, I thought the two of the characters were underground and they were coming up. And I thought, as Melissa was trying to push the trap door open, I thought, man, wouldn't it be terrible if he had blocked it somehow? How are they going to get out? And then immediately I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to block the door somehow. And then that gave a bit of interest and thought to what basically was a chase scene. You had to stop and overcome an obstacle, in which case she actually had to go down the ladder and let her companion go up because he was much stronger than she was. Also, he hadn't just almost died. Well, technically she had died, but she got better.
Is that a spoiler?
Oh, well, the thing that Never Let Me Leave is all about being trapped. Never Let Me Sleep is all about the dangers of going to sleep. Never Let Me Leave is all about being trapped in the underground. And Never Let Me Die, well, it's all about how dangerous life is. And
so, Miss Jennifer, what role does research play in Never Let Me in writing process?
there was quite a lot of research, especially around the medicine that the character had to take to keep her sanity and to keep being able to get through the day. A lot of people with mental illness are often portrayed either as complete villains or innocent to the point of naivete. By and large, people who are in medicine, they need it just to be normal, to not see hallucinations, to not. It's rather like I have gastric reflux. I have to take medicine for that so that I don't have this burning esophageal stuff. When you're going to have that kind of character, you absolutely need to get that kind of information correct if you want it to be relatable to people who know anything about that. It's rather like writing about a car and then someone who is a mechanic reading the book and going, that doesn't work like that. It throws them out of the story. And I didn't want to do that. So there was research for that. There was research into how would the United States deal with the fact that they lost contact with the full state. I actually called FEMA. There's a FEMA station near me, and they talked to me and they said, well, that would be Department of Homeland Security. It would involve the DOT. It would involve FEMA, the CDC. Would you like me to give you the contact information for Homeland Security? And I was like, no, actually, that's just enough information that I need. Because my main character, everything's coming from her point of view, and she doesn't know what's going to happen. And the only thing that she knows is what the voice on the phone tells her is going to happen. Because I'm writing an untrustworthy narrator. So I wanted to make it so that everything could literally be happening in her head. What else did I have to do? Like I said, I had to do some research on which state in the United States would take the longest for people to notice. And also which state had the least population. Again, North Dakota, it only had about 860,000 people in this entire state when I wrote the novel.
So,
And then when I went into working on the hospital scenes, I had to really think about how hospitals are laid out. So I went to a local hospital and walked through it just to see how they're laid out and how I can use that in my book.
Yes. So to sum up, Never Let Me, how did you maintain consistency in tone and voice throughout the novel itself?
Well, that can be a problem. But since I wrote the 3 books within 18 months, it was actually very easy for me to keep Melissa's voice clear. I just had a very, very clear point of view on her. And then as the cast grew, I picked out the things that were important to them and focused on making sure that those details were consistent. By and large, when you're done writing a novel, one of the best ways to make sure that it makes sense to people who aren't in your head is to have someone who hasn't heard you talking about it read the novel and then answer some questions. Make sure that the things, because it's all what the reader only gets what's on the page. They don't know what you meant. They're not in your head.
Yes, for sure. I agree with you, Miss Jennifer, and thank you again for sharing Never Let Me to the World. And can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Okay. My name's Jennifer Brozek. My website is jenniferbrozek.com. I have a once a month, because my PA makes me do it, newsletter. You can sign up right on my website. All of these books are linked from my website. If you would like to see more pictures of my cat, this one's Lilu. My Instagram is Jennifer_Brozek. In fact, all of my social media is linked off of my website. And I hope to hear from you soon.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Jennifer Brozek, because if you support her, more award-winning pieces to come. So, Miss Jennifer, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.